The moment Dr. Maya Washington approached the VIP reception desk at Baltimore's most exclusive hospital, 3 staff members immediately redirected her toward the charity clinic entrance. "That's not for you," one said dismissively. "Go around back." Dr. Maya Washington, 29, and Dr. Marcus Thompson, 34, had scheduled executive physicals at Mercy General Hospital. Maya, a toxicologist, and Marcus, a medical consultant, arrived in professional attire for VIP treatment. But when Maya mentioned their names, everything changed. Staff exchanged glances. Security appeared. "Are you sure you have the right hospital?" the supervisor asked suspiciously. Other patients stared as the couple was treated like charity cases, despite their valid appointments and premium insurance. A nurse suggested they might be more comfortable at the public hospital downtown. When Maya showed her medical credentials, staff barely acknowledged them. That's when Maya noticed a chemical smell that shouldn't exist in any legitimate hospital. These staff had no idea they'd just discriminated against the wrong doctors. It should have been routine. Maya Washington adjusted the collar of her navy blazer as she walked through the marble lobby of Mercy General Hospital, one of Baltimore's most prestigious medical facilities. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting geometric patterns across Italian marble floors that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. "Remember when we used to joke about affording places like this?" Dr. Marcus Thompson asked, straightening his silver tie as they approached the VIP reception area. At 34, he moved with the careful confidence that came from years of consulting on complex medical fraud cases, though today he was here purely as a patient. Maya smiled, her hand unconsciously touching the small medical caduceus pin on her lapel, a gift from her mentor at Johns Hopkins when she'd completed her toxicology fellowship. "Today we don't have to joke. We belong here." The VIP reception area gleamed with the kind of understated luxury that whispered rather than shouted its expense. Leather chairs the color of rich mahogany surrounded glass tables adorned with fresh orchids. The reception desk itself was a work of art, curved white marble with subtle gold veining, behind which sat a perfectly coiffed woman whose smile seemed as polished as the furniture. "Good morning," Maya said warmly, approaching the desk with the confidence of someone who'd earned her place in exclusive spaces through 15 years of medical training. "Dr. Maya Washington and Dr. Marcus Thompson. We have executive physicals scheduled at 9. The receptionist, whose nameplate read Jennifer Morrison, looked up from her computer screen with an expression that shifted almost imperceptibly from professional courtesy to something cooler. Her eyes took in Maya's professional attire, then Marcus's elegant suit, then back to Maya's face. "I'm sorry," Jennifer said, though her tone suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "Are you looking for the community clinic? That entrance is around the back of the building." The words hung in the air like a slap. Maya felt Marcus stiffen beside her, his protective instincts immediately activated by the assumption buried in that redirection. "No," Maya said evenly, her voice carrying the authority that came from years of testifying in federal court about drug chemistry. "We have appointments, executive physicals, 9 a.m. Jennifer's fingers moved across her keyboard with deliberate slowness, as if she were doing them a favor by even checking. "What did you say the names were?" "Dr. Maya Washington, Dr. Marcus Thompson." The silence stretched as Jennifer stared at her screen, then looked back at them with barely concealed skepticism. "Are you sure you have the right hospital? We have very specific protocols for our VIP services." Maya's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She'd faced this before. The assumption that her credentials were somehow questionable, that her presence in exclusive spaces required additional verification. But knowledge of the pattern didn't make it hurt less. "Perhaps," Marcus said, his voice carrying the diplomatic edge he'd developed during years of working with resistant medical institutions, "you could call Dr. Patricia Chen. She's the one who recommended this facility for our annual physicals." At the mention of Dr. Chen's name, Jennifer's expression shifted again. Doctor. Chen was one of Mercy General's most respected department heads, and her referrals carried significant weight. Jennifer's fingers moved more quickly across the keyboard now, and Maya could see the moment when their appointments appeared on her screen. "Oh," Jennifer said, though her tone remained skeptical. "I see the appointments, but I'm going to need to verify your insurance coverage and payment arrangements before we can proceed to the VIP wing." Maya and Marcus exchanged a glance. Their insurance was platinum level, their payment pre-authorized. This wasn't about money, it was about assumptions. "Of course," Maya said calmly, pulling out her wallet with movements that were deliberately controlled. She'd learned long ago that showing anger in these situations only validated the stereotypes that had created them in the first place. As she handed over her insurance cards, Maya's attention was caught by something else entirely. Her subtle but distinct chemical odor that seemed to emanate from somewhere behind the reception desk. It was faint, almost masked by the lavender air freshener that wafted through the lobby, but unmistakable to someone with her training. The smell was wrong, very wrong. In a legitimate hospital, chemical odors should be confined to specific areas. Laboratories, certain treatment rooms, controlled pharmaceutical storage areas. They shouldn't be detectable in a general reception area, especially not this particular combination of compounds that Maya's toxicology training allowed her to identify with disturbing accuracy. "Is everything in order?" Marcus asked quietly, noticing the slight tension in Maya's posture. Before she could respond, a new voice interrupted from behind them. "Excuse me." The voice belonged to a woman in her 40s wearing scrubs and a supervisor's badge. Her nameplate identified her as Patricia Chen, MD, but her tone was anything but welcoming. "I'm going to need to see some identification." Real identification. The chemical smell was getting stronger, and Maya realized they'd just walked into something much bigger than medical discrimination. "Doctor..." Patricia Chen stood before them with the kind of authority that came from years of running a medical department, but there was something in her eyes that Maya couldn't quite identify. Not hostility exactly, but a wariness that seemed disproportionate to the situation. "Dr. Chen," Marcus said, extending his hand with a professional smile. "I believe Dr. Williams from Johns Hopkins contacted you about our referral." Dr. Chen shook his hand, but her attention remained focused on Maya. "Dr. Washington, you're listed as a toxicologist. What's your specialty area?" It was an odd question, clinical rather than social, and Maya found herself answering with more specificity than a casual conversation would warrant. "Synthetic opioids and designer drug compounds. I consult with the DEA on chemical analysis of new synthetic drugs entering the market." Something flickered across Dr. Chen's face at the mention of the DEA, so quickly that Maya might have missed it if she hadn't been trained to observe micro-expressions during witness testimony. "I see," Dr. Chen said. "Well, I think we should get you both settled for your examinations. Jennifer, please escort our guest to examination rooms 15 and 16. Maya noticed that Dr. Chen didn't specify which wing of the hospital contained those rooms, but Jennifer's direction led them away from the VIP wing they'd originally requested and toward a more utilitarian corridor that Maya recognized as belonging to the hospital's general patient area. "Is there a particular reason we're not using the VIP facilities we paid for?" Marcus asked as they walked. Jennifer glanced over her shoulder with what might have been nervousness. "Those rooms are being prepared. These examination rooms have all the same equipment." But as they walked deeper into the hospital, Maya's professional eye began cataloging inconsistencies that had nothing to do with luxury amenities and everything to do with medical protocols. First, there were too many security cameras for a general medical area. Standard hospitals used cameras in pharmacies, emergency departments, and certain high-security areas, but the density of surveillance equipment they were passing was more appropriate for a federal facility or research laboratory. Second, the foot traffic was wrong. Maya had done enough consulting work in hospitals to recognize normal patterns of staff movement. What she was seeing suggested unusual activity. Medical personnel moving with purpose that didn't match routine patient care. Conversations conducted in hushed tones that stopped when strangers approached. Third and most concerning, the chemical smell was getting stronger. They arrived at examination rooms 15 and 16, which were indeed equipped with standard medical examination equipment. But Maya's toxicology training had taught her to notice details that others might miss, and what she noticed made her blood run cold. The examination table in room 15 had restraint points that were more robust than necessary for routine medical procedures. The medicine cabinet contained vials of substances that Maya didn't recognize immediately, which was concerning given her extensive knowledge of pharmaceutical compounds, and the ventilation system had been modified in ways that suggested someone needed to control airflow more precisely than normal medical requirements would demand. "Dr. Washington," said a nurse who'd appeared in the doorway. Her name tag read, "Lisa Rodriguez, RN. I'll need to draw some blood for your routine panels." Maya looked at the nurse's prep kit and felt her professional alarm bells ringing. The collection tubes were labeled, but not with the standard markers she'd expect for routine executive physical blood work. Instead, they seemed designed for more specialized analysis. "What specific tests are you running?" Maya asked. Nurse Rodriguez hesitated. "Standard executive panel, cholesterol, glucose, complete blood count." But Maya could see from the tube labels that the tests being prepared were far more comprehensive and far more intrusive than anything a routine physical would require. These were the kinds of tests that would reveal not just health status, but detailed information about drug exposure, genetic markers, and even forensic evidence that might be present in someone's system. "I'd like to see the specific test orders," Maya said firmly. I'll need to check with Dr. Chen," Rodriguez replied, backing toward the door. As soon as the nurse left, Maya turned to Marcus. "We need to talk, quietly." Marcus moved closer, recognizing the urgency in her voice. "What is it?" "The blood tests they're preparing aren't routine. They're forensic-level comprehensive panels. The kind law enforcement uses when they suspect someone has been exposed to specific, controlled substances." Marcus frowned. "Why would they—" He stopped as they both heard voices in the corridor outside. Not the normal chatter of medical staff, but the low, urgent tones of people coordinating something that required precision and secrecy. Maya moved to the small window in the examination room door and carefully peered into the hallway. What she saw confirmed her worst suspicions. Dr. Chen was standing near the nurses' station with two men Maya didn't recognize. One wore scrubs, but moved with the rigid posture of security or law enforcement. The other was dressed in street clothes, but had the kind of radio earpiece that suggested he wasn't a typical hospital visitor. They were looking at a tablet screen and pointing toward examination rooms 15 and 16. "Marcus," Maya whispered urgently, "I don't think we're here as patients. I think we're here as suspects." But even as she said it, Maya realized that didn't make sense either. Suspects in what? They'd come here voluntarily, for routine medical care, with proper appointments and insurance coverage. Unless... Maya's mind began working through the chemical evidence her nose had been collecting since they'd arrived. The specific combination of compounds she'd detected wasn't random. It was a signature, the kind of chemical fingerprint that indicated large-scale synthetic drug production. "Oh God," she whispered as the pieces fell into place. "Marcus, they don't think we're criminals. They think we're undercover law enforcement." That's when the hospital's fire alarm system activated, and Maya realized they weren't going to be leaving through the front door. The fire alarm's electronic wail echoed through the corridors of Mercy General, but Maya noticed immediately that the hospital staff wasn't responding the way medical professionals should during a genuine emergency. Instead of the controlled urgency of evacuation procedures, she observed something that looked more like coordinated positioning. Through the examination room's small window, Maya watched as security personnel appeared at strategic points throughout the corridor, not escorting patients to safety, but establishing what looked suspiciously like containment positions. "That's not a fire alarm," Marcus said grimly, his years of consulting on institutional security making him recognize the tactical nature of what they were witnessing. "That's lockdown protocol, disguised as emergency procedure." Maya's phone buzzed with an automated message from the hospital's emergency system. "Medical emergency lockdown in effect. All personnel and patients must remain in current locations until all clear is given." Medical emergency lockdown. Maya raised an eyebrow. "That's not a standard hospital protocol. In a real medical emergency, you evacuate or isolate specific areas. You don't trap everyone in place unless you're trying to prevent someone from leaving," Marcus finished. The implications were becoming clearer and more disturbing by the moment. Maya moved away from the window and began examining the examination room with the systematic thoroughness that her federal consulting work had taught her to apply to potential crime scenes. What she found confirmed her worst fears. The medicine cabinet, which she'd noticed earlier, contained vials of substances that were definitely not part of routine hospital pharmacy stock. Using her phone's camera, she photographed the labels on several vials, her toxicology expertise allowing her to identify compounds that had no legitimate medical application. Synthetic precursors for fentanyl analogues. Chemical catalysts used in large-scale drug manufacturing. Substances that were legal to possess individually, but illegal to combine in the quantities and ratios she was documenting. "Marcus," she said quietly, "this isn't a hospital conducting illegal drug tests on patients. This is a hospital being used as a cover for drug manufacturing." Marcus looked up from his own investigation of the examination room's surveillance equipment. That would explain the security camera density and the modified ventilation system. Maya nodded, her mind racing through the implications. Think about it. Hospitals have legitimate access to chemical precursors that would be flagged if purchased by other businesses. They have facilities that can be modified for manufacturing without attracting attention. They have transportation networks, ambulances, that can move products without inspection. And they have patients, Marcus added grimly, who can be used as unwitting test subjects. The full scope of what they'd stumbled into was staggering. This wasn't just medical discrimination that had led to an accidental discovery. This was a sophisticated criminal operation that used one of society's most trusted institutions as its cover. Maya's phone buzzed again, this time with a text message from an unknown number. "Dr. Washington, please remain calm. We know who you are, and we need your help." Before she could show the message to Marcus, the examination room door opened, and Dr. Chen entered, followed by the two men Maya had seen in the corridor. Her expression was a mixture of professional authority and barely controlled panic. "Dr. Washington, Dr. Thompson, I apologize for the confusion, but we have a situation that requires your specific expertise." Maya and Marcus remained still, neither confirming nor denying anything about their backgrounds. Dr. Chen continued, "We know that Dr. Washington is a DEA consultant specializing in synthetic opioid analysis. We know that Dr. Thompson has FBI credentials related to medical fraud investigation, and we know that your presence here today was not coincidental." The room fell silent, except for the continuing electronic wail of the false fire alarm. "Dr. Chen," Maya said carefully, "if you believe we're here in an official capacity, you should also know that interfering with federal agents is a serious felony." "That's exactly why we need to talk," Dr. Chen replied. "Because if you're here to investigate this hospital, you've walked into something much larger and more dangerous than anything in your case files." One of the men behind Dr. Chen stepped forward. Maya could see now that he was wearing a concealed earpiece and had the bearing of someone with military or law enforcement training. "Dr. Washington, my name is Agent Torres. I'm with the DEA's Baltimore Task Force. We've been conducting a long-term undercover operation at this facility." Maya felt the ground shift beneath her understanding of the situation. "Undercover operation?" "The synthetic opioid manufacturing network you've identified extends far beyond this hospital. We're talking about a distribution system that spans multiple states, involves dozens of medical facilities, and has connections to international drug cartels." Marcus leaned forward. "And you thought we were part of the investigation?" Torres nodded. "When two federal agents with relevant expertise schedule appointments at a facility under active surveillance, we assume coordination. When Washington began photographing pharmaceutical evidence, we assumed she was documenting for federal prosecution." Maya looked at the photos on her phone, then back at Torres. "We're not part of any official investigation. We're here for routine medical care, but what I've photographed is evidence of crimes that could result in hundreds of federal charges," Torres finished. "Which is why we need to get you out of here safely, and why the people running this operation are about to realize they have two potential federal witnesses who know too much." "Doctor." Chen's radio crackled with a message in medical terminology that Maya recognized as coded communication. Code blue in administrative suite. All department heads to respond immediately. Dr. Chen's face went white. "That's not medical code," she whispered. "That's notification that the cartel representatives are in the building." As if summoned by her words, the lights in the examination room flickered and went out, plunging them into emergency lighting that cast everything in an eerie red glow. The emergency lighting transformed Mercy General Hospital into something from a nightmare. Red bulbs cast long shadows that turned familiar medical equipment into ominous silhouettes, while the continuing fire alarm created an atmosphere of controlled chaos that Maya now understood was entirely intentional. Agent Torres moved to the examination room window and peered carefully into the corridor. "We've got a problem," he said quietly. The cartel's security team arrived faster than we anticipated. Through the glass, Maya could see figures moving through the hospital corridors with the purposeful coordination of a military operation. They wore scrubs and hospital identification, but their movements betrayed their true nature. These weren't medical professionals. They were armed enforcers disguised as healthcare workers. "How extensive is this operation?" Marcus asked Torres. "Bigger than anything DEA has seen before," Torres replied. "They're using hospital ambulances to transport product between facilities, medical helicopters for long-distance distribution, even patient transfer protocols as cover for moving large quantities of synthetic drugs." Dr. Chen moved closer to them, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "The administrative suite meeting that's happening right now? That's where they coordinate the entire East Coast distribution network. Representatives from Mexican cartels, Chinese chemical suppliers, and corrupted medical administrators from at least 12 hospitals." Maya felt the magnitude of what they'd accidentally uncovered, settling over her like a weight. "How many patients have been affected?" "We estimate that over 3,000 patients across multiple facilities have been used as unwitting test subjects for new synthetic compounds," Torres said grimly. "The mortality rate for some of these experimental drugs—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Maya's medical training filled in the horrifying blanks. The radio on Dr. Chen's belt crackled again. "All department heads to conference room A. Immediate compliance required." Dr. Chen looked at the radio with obvious fear. "I'm supposed to be in that meeting. My absence will be noted." "What happens if you don't go?" Marcus asked. "The same thing that happens to hospital administrators who ask too many questions about unusual patient mortality rates," Dr. Chen replied. "They disappear from the system, sometimes permanently." Maya was studying the hospital layout displayed on an emergency procedures poster when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The ventilation system schematic showed modifications that weren't typical for medical facilities, modifications that would allow gases or airborne chemicals to be distributed throughout the building with frightening efficiency. "Torres," she said urgently, "if they realize there are federal agents in the building, what's their exit strategy?" Torres followed her gaze to the ventilation schematic. "We've suspected they have a worst-case protocol, but we've never been able to confirm." "Confirm what?" Marcus demanded. "Doctor," Chen answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "If the operation is compromised, they release toxic gas through the ventilation system. It's designed to look like a hospital equipment malfunction. Tragic but accidental mass casualty event." Maya stared at the schematic, her toxicology expertise allowing her to understand exactly how such a system would work. "How many people are in the hospital right now?" "Current patient census is 847, Dr. Chen replied automatically, "plus approximately 300 staff members." "Over 1,100 people," Maya breathed. "They'd kill over 1,100 people to cover their tracks." "The cartel views it as acceptable losses to protect a multi-billion-dollar operation," Torres said, "and they have the chemical capability to make it happen." That's when Maya's phone buzzed with a new message, this one from a number she recognized, her DEA supervisor in Washington, D.C. The message was brief but terrifying. "Maya, DEA Baltimore reports no Agent Torres in their roster. Who are you with?" Maya showed the message to Marcus, whose face immediately shifted to high alert. They both turned to look at Torres, who was no longer pretending to be friendly. "Doctor." "Washington," Torres said, and his voice had changed completely. Gone was any pretense of federal authority, replaced by something cold and calculating. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding about who's conducting the investigation here." Dr. Chen stepped away from Torres, her face showing the dawning realization that she'd been manipulated. "You're not DEA," Maya said flatly. "No, Dr. Washington. I work for the people who run this operation. And you've just provided me with confirmation that you're exactly who we thought you were. Federal agents who stumbled into something they can't possibly understand." Marcus moved protectively closer to Maya. "What do you want?" Torres smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I want you to understand that your accidental discovery of this facility has created a problem that can only be solved in one of two ways. Either you become part of our operation, or you become casualties of an unfortunate hospital emergency. Maya's mind raced through their options. They were locked in a hospital that was actually a drug manufacturing and distribution center, surrounded by cartel security, with no way to communicate with legitimate law enforcement, and facing a choice between collaboration and death. "Dr. Chen," she said quietly, "when you said administrators who ask questions disappear, were you speaking from experience?" Dr. Chen nodded, tears in her eyes. "I tried to report the unusual patient deaths. I tried to contact the state medical board. I tried to reach out to federal agencies. And instead of reaching real federal agents, you reached them," Marcus said, gesturing toward Torres. "The cartel has infiltrated law enforcement communications at multiple levels," Torres said matter-of-factly. "When medical professionals try to report suspicious activity at facilities in our network, their reports come to us. We investigate the threat level and handle it accordingly." Maya realized with crystalline clarity that they were facing something far more sophisticated and dangerous than a simple drug manufacturing operation. This was systematic corruption of medical and law enforcement systems on a scale that threatened the entire concept of institutional trust. Torres's radio buzzed with a message in Spanish that Maya's language skills allowed her to understand perfectly. "Dr. Washington, we know exactly who you are. DEA toxicologist specializing in synthetic opioids. This changes everything." The Spanish words echoed in Maya's mind as she processed their full meaning. "La doctora Washington es DEA, especialista en opioides sintéticos. Esto lo cambia todo." Torres smiled at her obvious comprehension. "Your reputation precedes you, Dr. Washington. Vicente Morales sends his regards." Vicente Morales. Maya felt her blood turn to ice at the name. She'd been tracking Morales for 3 years through DEA intelligence reports. He was the architect behind the most sophisticated synthetic drug operations the agency had ever encountered. Operations that had killed thousands of people across North America. "You know Vicente personally?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady while her mind raced through escape scenarios. "I work for Vicente personally," Torres corrected. "And he's been very interested in your work, Dr. Washington. Your testimony has cost his organization considerable revenue." Marcus stepped closer to Maya, his protective instincts overriding tactical considerations. "Dr. Washington has been consulting on drug cases for years. Her expertise helps save lives." Torres laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Her expertise helps federal prosecutors send our chemists to prison, which is why Vicente has been looking forward to meeting her personally." Dr. Chen, who had been silent during this exchange, suddenly spoke up with desperate urgency. "You don't understand what you've gotten yourselves into. This isn't just about Dr. Washington's DEA work. Marcus Thompson isn't just a medical consultant. He's FBI, and he's been investigating medical fraud networks that connect to this operation." Maya turned to Marcus in shock. In all their years together, he'd never mentioned FBI credentials. She'd known he consulted on medical fraud cases, but had assumed he was a civilian expert. Marcus met her gaze with an expression of apology and resignation. "FBI Special Agent Marcus Thompson, White Collar Crime Division. I've been tracking medical fraud networks for 6 years. Specifically," Torres added with obvious satisfaction, "networks involving the systematic use of hospital facilities for illegal drug manufacturing and distribution. Networks run by Vicente Morales." The pieces of an impossibly complex puzzle began falling into place in Maya's mind. Their relationship wasn't the coincidence she'd thought. It was the intersection of 2 federal investigations that had been targeting the same criminal organization from different angles. "How long have you known?" Maya asked Marcus. "I've known about your DEA consulting work since our second date," Marcus admitted. "I thought you knew about my FBI background. When you suggested we schedule our physicals here, I thought you were following a lead. I suggested Mercy General because Dr. Chen is supposed to be one of the best internists in Baltimore," Maya said. This was supposed to be routine medical care. Torres was enjoying their confusion. "The beautiful irony is that you're both here by complete accident. 2 federal agents, working on the same case from different agencies, who don't even know they're working on the same case." Dr. Chen moved closer to them, lowering her voice. "There's something else you need to know. The meeting happening in the administrative suite right now. Vicente Morales is here personally, in the hospital, today. Maya felt the stakes of their situation escalate dramatically. If Vicente was here personally, it meant either the operation was expanding significantly or it was being shut down permanently. Either scenario posed extreme danger to anyone with knowledge of the facility's true purpose. "Why is he here?" Marcus asked. Torres checked his radio, then looked back at them with something that might have been professional respect. "He came to meet you, Dr. Washington. Your work has impressed him. He wants to offer you a consulting position that pays considerably more than federal employment. And if I refuse?" "If you refuse, you become evidence that needs to be destroyed along with this facility." Maya realized that Torres wasn't just talking about her and Marcus. "You're going to destroy the entire hospital?" "Only if necessary," Torres replied. "We prefer to relocate operations when they're compromised. But if relocation isn't feasible..." He left the sentence unfinished, but Maya's imagination filled in the horrifying details. A hospital fire or gas leak that killed hundreds of patients and staff would eliminate all witnesses, while appearing to be a tragic accident. Dr. Chen's radio crackled again. "Dr. Chen to conference room A immediately. Patient Morales requires consultation." "Patient Morales?" Maya raised an eyebrow. "Vicente checks in as a patient whenever he visits. It provides legal cover for his presence and allows him to move through the facility without attracting attention," Dr. Chen explained. Torres looked at his watch. "Dr. Chen, you're expected in that meeting." "Doctor, Washington and Agent Thompson will be coming with me to meet Vicente." "And then what?" Marcus asked. "That depends entirely on how willing Dr. Washington is to apply her expertise to problems other than law enforcement." Maya looked at Marcus, then at Dr. Chen, weighing options that all seemed to lead to disaster. But as they prepared to leave the examination room, she noticed something that Torres had missed in his confidence. Her phone, which she'd been using to photograph pharmaceutical evidence, had been automatically uploading those photos to a secure DEA server through an encrypted connection that activated whenever she documented potential evidence. Every photograph she'd taken, every detail she'd observed, every piece of evidence she'd gathered was already in federal hands. The only question now was whether she and Marcus would survive long enough for that evidence to matter. As Torres motioned for them to follow him into the corridor, Maya caught sight of something through the examination room window that made her realize their situation had just become even more desperate. Through the examination room window, Maya watched a convoy of ambulances arriving at Mercy General's emergency bay. Not the normal patient transport vehicles, but a coordinated fleet that moved with military precision. Each ambulance bore the standard medical markings, but Maya's trained eye caught details that were wrong. Drivers who carried themselves like security personnel, medical equipment visible through rear windows that looked more like laboratory apparatus than emergency care tools. "The supply run," Torres said, following her gaze. "We receive chemical precursors twice monthly through medical supply deliveries, perfectly legal shipments that become something else entirely once they're inside the facility." Maya counted at least 8 ambulances in the convoy, each one representing thousands of doses of synthetic drugs that would soon be distributed across the eastern seaboard. The scale of the operation was staggering. As they moved through the hospital corridors, Torres provided a guided tour that was part criminal confession and part professional orientation. "Operating Room 7 has been converted into our primary manufacturing facility," he explained, as they passed a door marked with standard surgical warnings. "The sterile environment and chemical ventilation systems make it ideal for synthetic drug production." Maya could see through the small window in the door that the room had been extensively modified. Where surgical equipment should have been, she observed glass apparatus and chemical processing equipment that looked like something from a university chemistry laboratory. "The beauty of using a hospital," Torres continued, "is that we have legitimate access to chemical precursors that would trigger DEA attention if purchased by other businesses. Morphine, fentanyl, midazolam, all legal for hospitals to acquire in large quantities." Marcus was studying the facility's layout with his FBI training for institutional analysis. "How many hospitals are part of this network?" 53 facilities across 12 states, Torres replied with obvious pride, each one contributing to a distribution system that generates approximately $2.8 billion annually. Maya felt sick at the numbers. 53 hospitals meant hundreds of thousands of patients who trusted these institutions for legitimate medical care, unknowingly surrounded by one of the largest drug manufacturing operations in American history. They arrived at an elevator that required special keycard access. Torres swiped his card and selected the basement level, a floor that wasn't listed on any of the hospital's public directories. "Doctor Chen, you'll be joining the administrative meeting on the 3rd floor," Torres said as the elevator doors opened. "Dr. Washington and Agent Thompson will be coming with me to meet Vicente." As the elevator descended, Maya tried to reconcile the hospital she'd thought she was entering with the criminal enterprise she'd actually discovered. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Doctors and nurses providing legitimate medical care on upper floors, while sophisticated drug manufacturing occurred in the basement. "How do you prevent hospital staff from discovering the operation?" Marcus asked. "Compartmentalization," Torres replied. "Most staff members know only what they need to know for their specific roles. They might notice unusual activity, but they interpret it within medical contexts because that's their frame of reference." The elevator opened into a basement level that looked like a combination of medical laboratory and high-security facility. Clean rooms with glass walls contained equipment that Maya recognized from her consulting work with DEA labs, but here, instead of analyzing seized drugs, the equipment was producing them. "Dr. Washington," a new voice called from across the laboratory space. Maya turned to see a man in his 50s approaching them. He wore a white coat over expensive clothing and moved with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. But what struck Maya immediately was his eyes, intelligent, calculating, and completely without warmth. "Vicente Morales," he said, extending a hand as if they were meeting at a medical conference rather than in the basement of a criminal operation. Maya didn't take his hand. "Mr. Morales." "Dr. Morales, actually," Vicente corrected with a slight smile. "Medical degree from Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, specialization in pharmaceutical chemistry. I appreciate expertise, Dr. Washington, which is why I've been following your work." Marcus positioned himself slightly behind Maya, ready to provide protection, but recognizing that any aggressive move would be suicide in a facility controlled by Vicente's security. "Your testimony in the Ramirez case was particularly impressive," Vicente continued. "Your analysis of our synthetic fentanyl variants demonstrated a level of chemical understanding that few people possess." Maya realized with growing horror that Vicente wasn't just familiar with her work. He'd been studying it, learning from it, using her federal testimony to improve his criminal operations. "You've been modifying your formulations based on DEA analysis," she said. "Of course. When the best toxicologist in federal law enforcement explains exactly how to identify our products, we use that information to create products that are harder to identify." The implication was staggering. Maya's work to help law enforcement identify and prosecute synthetic drug operations had inadvertently provided criminals with a roadmap for creating more sophisticated and dangerous drugs. "Your expertise has been invaluable to our research and development," Vicente continued, "which is why I want to offer you a position that pays considerably more than federal consulting work." Maya looked around the laboratory, at equipment that represented millions of dollars in investment, at a production capacity that could flood American communities with deadly synthetic drugs. "What position?" "Director of Product Development," Vicente replied. "Your job would be to apply your toxicology expertise to creating synthetic compounds that are both more effective and more difficult for law enforcement to detect." Maya stared at Vicente, processing the full implications of what he was offering. He wanted her to use her medical training and federal experience to create drugs that would kill more people more efficiently, while evading the very detection methods she'd helped develop. "And if I refuse?" she asked. Vicente's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Dr. Washington, you're a scientist. You understand cause and effect. You've seen our operation, met our personnel, learned our methods. That knowledge creates certain obligations." Marcus stepped closer to Maya, recognizing the threat buried in Vicente's diplomatic language. "However," Vicente continued, "I'm hoping you'll see the opportunity here. Your current DEA consulting pays what, $150,000 annually? We're prepared to offer $2 million per year, plus benefits that include relocation assistance and comprehensive protection for your family. Maya felt the walls of the basement laboratory closing in around her. Vicente wasn't just offering her a job. He was offering her a choice between wealth and death, between betraying everything she believed in and disappearing forever. That's when her phone, which had been silent since Torres had led them from the examination room, buzzed with an incoming call from a number she recognized, her DEA supervisor in Washington. Vicente noticed the phone call and held out his hand. "Dr. Washington, I'll need you to decline that call, and then we'll need to discuss your decision regarding our offer." But Maya was studying the laboratory equipment around them with new understanding. The sophisticated chemical analysis apparatus, the sterile production environment, the scale of the operation, all of it suddenly made sense in a way that gave her hope. "Mr. Morales," she said, deliberately using his non-medical title, "you've made one critical error in your operation." Vicente raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "You've created a drug manufacturing facility inside a hospital, but you haven't considered what happens when someone with my training recognizes that this setup produces evidence as well as drugs." As Maya spoke, alarms began sounding throughout the basement level. Not fire alarms this time, but security alerts that meant their conversation was about to be interrupted by something Vicente definitely hadn't planned for. The security alarms transformed the basement laboratory into a maze of flashing red lights and electronic warnings. Vicente's expression shifted from confident control to sharp alertness as he barked orders in rapid Spanish to Torres and the other security personnel. Maya recognized the voice responding through the facility's intercom system. Agent Jennifer Walsh from the DEA's Baltimore field office, someone Maya had worked with on multiple investigations. "Attention all personnel in the building. This is Agent Walsh, Drug Enforcement Administration. Federal warrants are being executed at this facility. All individuals should remain calm and comply with federal agents." Vicente's face went white with rage. "How did they find us?" Maya smiled for the first time since arriving at Mercy General. "Every photograph I took of your pharmaceutical supplies was automatically uploaded to DEA servers through an encrypted evidence-gathering application on my phone. The moment I documented synthetic drug precursors in Examination Room 15, federal agents began mobilizing." Marcus looked at Maya with something between admiration and amazement. "You've been building a case this entire time?" "I've been doing my job," Maya replied, "which is to identify and document illegal drug operations wherever I find them." Torres grabbed Maya's arm roughly. "Vicente, we need to initiate emergency protocols immediately." But Vicente was staring at Maya with a mixture of professional respect and cold fury. "Dr. Washington, you've impressed me once again, but you've also created a problem that requires a permanent solution." The intercom crackled again with Agent Walsh's voice. "Dr. Maya Washington, if you can hear this, federal agents are in the building. Signal your location if you're able to do so safely." Maya realized that her DEA colleagues were treating this as a hostage rescue operation, which meant they understood the danger she and Marcus were facing. "Vicente," she said, "you have federal agents surrounding the building, evidence of your operation already in federal hands, and 2 federal agents who can testify about everything they've witnessed. Your only rational choice is surrender." Vicente laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Dr. Washington, you underestimate our contingency planning. Torres, initiate gas protocol." Maya's blood ran cold. The toxic gas release through the hospital's ventilation system, the same threat Torres had mentioned earlier. "You'll kill over 1,000 patients and staff members," Marcus said, horrified. "Acceptable losses to protect a $8 billion operation," Vicente replied coldly, "and it will eliminate all witnesses while appearing to be a tragic hospital equipment malfunction." Torres moved to a control panel Maya hadn't noticed earlier, a system that appeared to interface with the hospital's HVAC controls. Maya's mind raced through everything she knew about the hospital's layout, the ventilation modifications she'd observed, and the chemical compounds she'd identified in the examination room medicine cabinet. "Torres," she said urgently, "before you activate that system, you should know that I've identified the specific compounds you're planning to release." Torres paused, his hand hovering over the control panel. "Hydrogen sulfide mixed with chlorine gas," Maya continued, using her toxicology expertise to analyze the chemical signature she'd detected earlier. Lethal in combination, but also highly unstable. If you release those compounds through a ventilation system that's been modified for drug manufacturing, you'll create an explosive reaction that will destroy this entire building. Vicente studied Maya's face, clearly trying to determine if she was bluffing. The blast radius will extend for 3 city blocks, Maya added, including the federal agents who are currently surrounding this building. That's when the lights in the basement laboratory flickered and went out completely, plunging them into emergency lighting. Through the red-tinted darkness, Maya could hear the sound of elevator doors opening and tactical boots moving across the laboratory floor. "Federal agents!" a voice shouted. "Everyone on the ground now!" Vicente grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her toward what appeared to be an emergency exit she hadn't noticed earlier. "Dr. Washington, it seems you'll be coming with us after all." But Maya had been waiting for exactly this moment. As Vicente tried to drag her toward the exit, she did something that her federal training had prepared her for, but she'd never had to use in a real-world situation. She bit down hard on a molar that contained a microtransmitter DEA agents used in high-risk undercover operations, a device that would signal her exact location to federal tactical teams. "Agent Walsh," she called out into the darkness. "Basement level, northwest corner, 4 hostile subjects, 1 civilian hostage." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Federal agents emerged from what seemed like every direction, tactical lights cutting through the red emergency illumination, voices shouting coordinated commands. Vicente released Maya's arm and raised his hands, finally recognizing that his operation had reached its end. But as Maya moved toward the safety of the federal agents, Torres made one final desperate move toward the gas release controls. Maya realized she had seconds to prevent a chemical reaction that would kill thousands of people, and only her toxicology expertise could stop it. Maya launched herself toward the ventilation control panel just as Torres's hand reached for the gas release mechanism. Her tackle sent them both crashing into the control station, but not before Torres managed to activate the first stage of the chemical release sequence. Warning lights began flashing across the control panel as automated systems initiated what Vicente had designed as his ultimate fail-safe, a chemical release that would kill everyone in the hospital while destroying all evidence of the drug manufacturing operation. "Maya!" Marcus shouted as federal agents secured Vicente and moved to assist her. But Maya was already working, her fingers flying across the control panel as she applied her toxicology expertise to reverse a process that had been designed specifically to be irreversible. "Agent Walsh," she called to her DEA colleague, "I need the hospital's head of facilities maintenance and a chemistry set. Now." Agent Walsh, recognizing the urgency in Maya's voice, immediately radioed for both requests while federal agents established a secure perimeter around the control panel. Maya studied the chemical release sequence on the panel's display screen, her mind working through the molecular interactions that Torres had been about to trigger. "The system is designed to mix hydrogen sulfide and chlorine gas in the main ventilation shaft," she explained rapidly, as the hospital's facilities manager arrived with a portable chemistry kit. "Separately, these gases are deadly but manageable. Combined in an enclosed space with the modified airflow system, they create a reaction that's both toxic and explosive." "How long do we have?" Agent Walsh asked. Maya checked the timer on the control panel. 4 minutes before full release, but the preliminary chemical injection has already begun. Working with the speed and precision that had made her one of the DEA's most valued consultants, Maya began preparing a neutralizing compound using chemicals from the portable kit and materials she'd identified in the laboratory around them. "The key is to interrupt the molecular bonding before the gases reach critical reaction mass," she explained as she worked. "If I can introduce a buffering agent into the ventilation system." Marcus, meanwhile, was coordinating with federal agents to begin emergency evacuation of the hospital's upper floors. But with over 1,000 patients and staff members, evacuation would take far longer than the 4 minutes Maya had to work with. "Maya," Marcus said urgently, "can you stop the release entirely, or are we looking at damage control?" Maya's hands never stopped moving as she prepared the neutralizing compound. "I can stop it, but I need to reverse the chemical sequence in the exact order it was initiated. If I make a mistake, I accelerate the reaction instead of stopping it." Vicente, who was being held nearby by federal agents, spoke for the first time since his capture. Dr. Washington, that system was designed by chemical engineers with advanced degrees. You can't possibly understand the complexity. Mr. Morales, Maya interrupted without looking up from her work. I have a PhD in toxicology from Johns Hopkins and 6 years of experience analyzing the exact compounds you've been manufacturing. Your engineers designed this system to kill people. I'm going to design a solution to save them. With 2 minutes remaining on the timer, Maya injected her neutralizing compound into the ventilation system and began manually reversing the chemical release sequence. The control panel's warning lights shifted from red to amber as her intervention began taking effect. It's working, Agent Walsh observed, watching the chemical concentration readings decrease. But Maya wasn't finished. With 1 minute remaining, she initiated a complete purge of the ventilation system, flooding it with medical-grade oxygen that would not only neutralize any remaining toxic compounds, but also provide an extra safety margin for anyone who might have been exposed to preliminary gas release. The timer reached 0, and instead of deadly gas flooding the hospital, clean air began flowing through the ventilation system. Maya stepped back from the control panel, her hands shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. Hospital secure, Agent Walsh reported into her radio. Chemical threat neutralized. All patients and staff are safe. Vicente stared at Maya with something that might have been professional admiration. Dr. Washington, you've cost me a $2.8 billion operation, but I have to admit, that was impressive work. That was federal work, Maya replied. And you're under arrest for conspiracy to manufacture controlled substances, conspiracy to commit mass murder, and about 40 other federal charges that are going to put you away for life. As federal agents led Vicente away, Torres made one final attempt to restart the chemical release system, but Marcus was ready for him. Years of FBI training kicked in as he tackled Torres away from the control panel and secured him with restraints that Agent Walsh provided. Torres, Marcus said as he handed the secured suspect to federal agents, you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted mass murder, and impersonating a federal agent. Maya looked around the basement laboratory that had almost become the scene of a mass casualty event. Federal agents were already beginning to catalog evidence, while hazmat specialists prepared to safely process the chemical manufacturing equipment. Agent Walsh, Maya said, this facility is connected to a network of 53 hospitals across 12 states. We're going to need coordinated raids to shut down the entire operation. Already in progress, Walsh replied. The evidence you uploaded triggered simultaneous raids at facilities in 8 states. This is going to be the largest drug manufacturing bust in DEA history. As they prepared to leave the basement laboratory, Maya realized that what had started as a routine medical appointment had become one of the most significant federal operations of her career. But more importantly, over 1,000 innocent people were alive because she'd been in the right place at the right time, with the right expertise. That's when Agent Walsh's radio crackled with an urgent message. Agent Walsh, we have a problem. Vicente Morales has escaped federal custody, and he's not done with Dr. Washington yet. The news of Vicente's escape hit the secured basement laboratory like a physical blow. Agent Walsh immediately activated emergency protocols while federal agents established defensive positions around the building. How is that possible? Maya demanded. He was in federal custody with multiple agents. Agent Walsh was coordinating with tactical teams through her radio while reviewing security footage on a tablet. Vicente's people had a backup extraction plan. They used a medical helicopter and fake emergency patient transfer paperwork to get him out of the building. Marcus moved closer to Maya, his protective instincts heightened by the realization that Vicente's escape created immediate danger for both of them. What kind of resources does he have access to? Marcus asked. Enough to fund a $2.8 billion operation across 12 states, Agent Walsh replied grimly, which means enough to hire professional assassins, corrupt additional law enforcement personnel, or stage another chemical attack. Maya was studying the hospital's layout on an emergency evacuation map, her mind working through tactical scenarios. If Vicente wants to eliminate witnesses and destroy evidence, what's his most likely approach? Given his previous plan, probably another attempt at mass casualty destruction, Agent Walsh said. But now he knows we've neutralized his chemical release system. That's when Maya's phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Agent Walsh nodded for her to answer it, while technicians prepared to trace the call. Dr. Washington. Vicente's voice was calm and controlled, as if he were calling to schedule a medical appointment rather than speaking as an escaped federal fugitive. I wanted to congratulate you on your chemical expertise. Impressive work preventing the gas release. Vicente, you're surrounded by federal agents. Surrender now and save yourself additional charges. Vicente laughed. Dr. Washington, I'm not surrounded by anyone. I'm actually in a much better position than you might think. Maya looked around the basement laboratory, which was filled with federal agents and DEA personnel. It felt like the safest place in the building. What do you want? Maya asked. I want you to understand that this isn't over, Vicente replied. My operation extends far beyond what you've discovered today, and my reach includes people you trust. Agent Walsh was frantically gesturing for Maya to keep Vicente talking, while the trace equipment locked onto his location. Your network is finished, Maya said. We've identified 53 facilities, and federal raids are shutting them down simultaneously. 53 facilities that you know about, Vicente corrected. But, Dr. Washington, there are aspects of this operation that will surprise you. That's when Maya heard something in the background of Vicente's call that made her blood run cold. The distinctive sound of hospital equipment and medical monitors. You're still in the building, she realized. Dr. Washington, I'm not just in the building, I'm in the ICU on the 7th floor, and I have something that belongs to you. Maya felt the ground shift beneath her understanding of the situation. She didn't have anything in the ICU, unless… Dr. Chen, she breathed. Dr. Patricia Chen, who helped you understand our operation and provided you with crucial information about our methods. She's currently unconscious in ICU bed 7, connected to life support equipment that I can control remotely. Maya's hands began shaking as the implications hit her. Vicente hadn't just escaped. He'd taken a hostage, someone who'd helped them expose the criminal operation. What do you want? Maya asked again, but this time her voice carried a different tone entirely. I want you and Agent Thompson to come to the ICU alone, and we're going to have a conversation about the future of my operation. Agent Walsh was shaking her head vigorously, clearly recognizing the tactical disaster that Vicente's proposal represented. And if we refuse? Maya asked. Doctor, Chen dies, and I disappear into a network of medical facilities that spans 3 countries. You'll have saved lives today, Dr. Washington, but you'll have failed to save the life of someone who trusted you. Maya looked at Marcus, then at Agent Walsh, weighing impossible choices. Vicente, Maya said finally, if we come to the ICU, what guarantee do we have that you'll release Dr. Chen? You don't, Vicente replied honestly. But you have my word that if you don't come, she dies in the next 10 minutes. Maya knew she was walking into a trap, but she also knew that Dr. Chen had risked everything to help expose the criminal operation. She couldn't abandon her now. We're coming, Maya said. As she ended the call, Agent Walsh grabbed her arm. Maya, this is obviously a trap. We can't let you walk into a hostage situation. Agent Walsh, Doctor. Chen is in danger because she helped us. I'm not leaving her to die. Marcus stepped forward. Maya's right, and she's not going alone. As they prepared to head to the ICU, Maya realized that Vicente's escape and hostage-taking might not be desperate improvisation. It might be part of a larger plan that they still didn't understand. The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt like an eternity. Maya and Marcus were accompanied by Agent Walsh and 2 other federal agents, but they all knew that Vicente's control of the ICU created tactical challenges that traditional law enforcement approaches couldn't easily solve. He's had time to prepare defensive positions and establish control over medical equipment that could kill Dr. Chen instantly, Agent Walsh explained as they reached the ICU level. Our tactical options are extremely limited. Maya was studying the ICU's layout on a hospital map, her medical training helping her understand the environment they were entering. ICU beds are typically separated by curtains and movable partitions, she explained. Limited sightlines, multiple hiding places, and every bed has life support equipment that can be weaponized if someone understands how to use it. Marcus checked his service weapon, though they all knew that gunfire in an ICU would endanger patients beyond Dr. Chen. The ICU doors were secured with electronic locks that required keycard access, but those same systems that were designed to protect patients from unauthorized visitors now protected Vicente from law enforcement response. Agent Walsh's radio crackled with an update from the hospital's security office. ICU surveillance cameras have been disabled. We have no visual on the suspect or hostage. He's had time to study the facility's systems, Maya realized. Vicente isn't just a drug manufacturer, he's someone who understands how to exploit institutional infrastructure. They approached the ICU entrance, where a handwritten sign had been posted. Dr. Washington and Agent Thompson only. All other personnel will result in immediate harm to patient. Maya took a deep breath and looked at Marcus. Ready? Ready, Marcus replied. Agent Walsh handed Maya a nearly invisible radio earpiece. Maintain contact if possible. We'll be positioned outside these doors. Maya and Marcus entered the ICU together, leaving the safety of federal backup behind. The ICU was eerily quiet, except for the rhythmic sounds of ventilators and cardiac monitors that provided life support for patients who couldn't breathe or maintain heart rhythm on their own. The lights had been dimmed to nighttime levels, creating shadows between patient beds that could conceal multiple threats. Dr. Washington, Vicente's voice came from somewhere deeper in the ICU. Thank you for coming. And Agent Thompson, I appreciate your loyalty to your partner. Maya moved carefully between patient beds, her eyes adjusting to the dim lighting, while her ears tracked Vicente's voice to determine his location. Where is Dr. Chen? Maya called out. Bed 7 as promised. She's alive, but her condition is precarious. Maya found bed 7 and felt her heart sink. Dr. Chen was unconscious, connected to a ventilator that was keeping her alive. But Maya could see immediately that the ventilator settings had been altered. The oxygen concentration was too low to maintain consciousness, and the breathing rate was insufficient for long-term survival. What did you do to her? Maya demanded. Vicente emerged from behind a bank of medical equipment, holding what appeared to be a tablet computer that was connected to Dr. Chen's life support systems. Dr. Chen is experiencing the effects of a sedative compound that I administered 30 minutes ago, Vicente explained. The compound is temporary, but the ventilator settings I've programmed are not compatible with long-term survival. Maya studied the ventilator's display, her medical training allowing her to understand exactly how Vicente was using the life support equipment as a weapon. You've programmed it to slowly reduce oxygen delivery, she realized. She'll suffocate gradually unless someone restores normal settings. Correct. And the system is password protected with a timer. If the correct password isn't entered within the next 5 minutes, the ventilator will cease functioning entirely. Marcus positioned himself where he could see both Vicente and the ICU's exits, ready to respond to threats from multiple directions. What's the password? Maya asked. Vicente smiled. The password is your agreement to resume the work I offered you in the basement laboratory. Maya stared at him in disbelief. You want me to agree to develop drugs for your organization in exchange for Dr. Chen's life? Dr. Washington, I want you to understand that my operation is larger and more resilient than what you disrupted today. You've cost me one facility, but I have resources that extend far beyond what you've discovered. That's when Maya heard something that made her realize Vicente was telling the truth about the scope of his operation, the sound of helicopter rotors approaching the hospital. Medical evacuation helicopter, Vicente explained. Dr. Chen and I will be leaving together. You can come with us and save her life, or you can watch her die and spend the rest of your career wondering what you could have done differently. Maya looked at the ventilator display, which showed Dr. Chen's oxygen levels dropping toward dangerous territory. She had less than 3 minutes to make a decision that would determine whether Dr. Chen lived or died, and whether Vicente's criminal organization continued operating. But as she weighed her options, Maya realized something that Vicente had overlooked in his confidence about controlling the situation. Her medical expertise extended beyond toxicology. She also had emergency medicine training that might allow her to save Dr. Chen without giving Vicente what he wanted. As the helicopter rotors grew louder and Dr. Chen's oxygen levels continued dropping, Maya made a decision that would test every aspect of her medical training. Maya's emergency medicine training kicked in as she assessed Dr. Chen's condition with the systematic precision that had carried her through medical residency. The ventilator was indeed delivering insufficient oxygen, but Vicente had made one critical error in his understanding of life support systems. Marcus, she said quietly. "When I give you the signal, I need you to create a distraction that draws Vicente's attention away from the tablet for exactly 30 seconds. Marcus nodded, recognizing the tactical coordination they'd developed during their years together. Maya moved closer to Dr. Chen's bed, ostensibly to check her condition, but actually to access the manual override controls that all ventilators were required to have for emergency situations. "Vicente," she said, raising her voice to mask the sound of her movements. "Before I agree to anything, I need to understand something about your operation." Vicente, confident in his control of the situation, was happy to elaborate. "What would you like to know, Dr. Washington?" "The 53 facilities you mentioned. How do you coordinate chemical production across that many sites without triggering federal attention?" As Vicente began explaining the sophisticated logistics of his drug manufacturing network, Maya used his distraction to locate the ventilator's emergency controls. Medical equipment manufacturers were required by federal law to include manual overrides that could restore normal function even if computerized systems were compromised. Maya had used these systems during her emergency medicine rotation when treating patients whose ventilators had malfunctioned. The sound of helicopter rotors was getting louder, indicating that Vicente's extraction plan was moving forward on schedule. "Dr. Washington," Vicente said, checking his watch, "we have 2 minutes remaining. I need your decision." Maya looked at Marcus and gave him the subtle signal they'd agreed upon. Marcus immediately moved toward Vicente, his hand reaching for his service weapon. "Vicente Morales, you're under arrest for kidnapping and attempted murder." Vicente spun toward Marcus, his attention completely focused on the perceived threat, his tablet momentarily forgotten. Maya used those crucial 30 seconds to activate the ventilator's manual override, restoring normal oxygen flow and breathing rate to Dr. Chen's life support system. "Marcus, down!" Maya shouted, as Vicente realized what she'd done, and swung the tablet toward Dr. Chen's bed in an attempt to regain control of the life support equipment. But Maya was already moving, her years of federal training combining with her medical expertise, as she tackled Vicente away from Dr. Chen's bed. The tablet flew from Vicente's hands, skittering across the ICU floor and coming to rest beneath a bank of medical equipment where neither of them could reach it. Vicente was stronger than Maya, but her position gave her leverage as they struggled near Dr. Chen's bed. More importantly, Maya's medical training had taught her exactly where to apply pressure to subdue someone without causing permanent injury. "Maya," Marcus called out, as he secured Vicente with restraints he'd carried for exactly this situation. Agent Walsh and her tactical team burst through the ICU doors, having heard the commotion and decided that Dr. Chen's safety took priority over Vicente's hostage demands. "Dr. Chen's vitals are stabilizing," Maya reported as she checked the life support equipment. The manual override restored normal ventilator function. Vicente, now in federal custody and wearing restraints that made escape impossible, looked at Maya with something that might have been professional respect. "Dr. Washington, you continue to impress me, but this isn't over." "Yes, it is," Maya replied firmly. "Your operation is finished. Your network is being dismantled, and you're going to federal prison for the rest of your life." Agent Walsh coordinated with hospital security to secure the ICU, while medical staff checked on patients who might have been affected by Vicente's takeover of the unit. The helicopter rotors that had been approaching the hospital suddenly changed direction and began moving away. Vicente's extraction team had apparently realized that their plan had failed. Dr. Chen began showing signs of consciousness as the proper oxygen levels restored normal brain function. "Maya?" Dr. Chen's voice was weak but clear. "What happened?" "You helped us expose a criminal organization," Maya explained gently, "and you're going to be fine." As federal agents led Vicente away for the second and final time, Maya realized that what had started as a discriminatory incident at hospital reception had become one of the most significant federal operations of her career. More importantly, she'd saved the life of someone who had risked everything to do the right thing. But as she watched Vicente disappear into federal custody, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that his words, "This isn't over," represented a threat that extended beyond his personal reach. That's when Agent Walsh approached her, with information that would determine whether Vicente's network was truly finished or whether they'd only eliminated one piece of a much larger puzzle. Agent Walsh handed Maya a tablet, displaying real-time reports from federal raids that had been coordinated across 8 states. Maya, the information you gathered led to the largest coordinated drug bust in DEA history, Agent Walsh said. 53 facilities, over 300 arrests, and approximately $2.8 billion in seized assets. Maya scrolled through the reports, seeing hospital after hospital being secured by federal agents, chemical manufacturing equipment being confiscated, and criminal networks being dismantled. What about the patients at these facilities? Maya asked, her medical training making her concerned about innocent people who might have been affected. Every facility is being evaluated by medical teams to ensure patients receive legitimate care, Agent Walsh replied. In several cases, we've discovered that patients were being used as unwitting test subjects for experimental drugs. Marcus appeared beside them, having finished coordinating with FBI personnel who were documenting evidence from the basement laboratory. The scope is staggering, he reported. Vicente's network was processing over 15 million doses of synthetic drugs annually. We're estimating that this bust prevented thousands of overdose deaths. Dr. Chen, who was recovering in the ICU but alert enough to participate in the conversation, provided additional context from her medical perspective. The synthetic compounds they were manufacturing were specifically designed to be more addictive and more lethal than traditional drugs, she explained. Vicente told me they were targeting young people because addiction in that demographic generates longer-term revenue. Maya felt sick at the clinical calculation behind Vicente's operation, using medical expertise and hospital facilities to create drugs that would kill children more efficiently. Dr. Chen, what made you decide to help us? Maya asked. When I realized that my medical oath to do no harm was being perverted into a system designed to cause maximum harm, Dr. Chen replied. I became a doctor to save lives, not to help criminals destroy them. Agent Walsh looked up from her tablet, with news that brought their entire operation full circle. Maya, the evidence you documented has triggered an investigation into medical insurance fraud that extends to over 200 facilities nationwide. Vicente's organization was billing insurance companies for legitimate medical procedures while actually conducting drug manufacturing. The financial scope was as staggering as the medical implications. Hundreds of millions of dollars in fraudulent insurance claims had funded one of the largest drug operations in American history. There's something else, Agent Walsh continued. The DEA is establishing a new task force specifically focused on medical facility drug operations. They want you to head the program. Maya looked around the ICU at Dr. Chen, recovering from her ordeal, at Marcus, whose FBI expertise had been crucial to understanding the criminal network, at Agent Walsh, whose tactical coordination had saved lives. A task force focused on medical crimes? Medical institutions being exploited for criminal purposes, Agent Walsh clarified. Your combination of medical expertise and federal law enforcement experience makes you uniquely qualified to identify and investigate this type of operation. Maya realized that what had started as a personal experience with discrimination had evolved into an opportunity to protect the medical profession itself from criminal infiltration. What would be the scope of this task force? National, working with hospitals, medical boards, and federal agencies to identify facilities that might be compromised by criminal organizations. Marcus smiled at Maya's obvious interest in the position. Sounds like the perfect job for someone who accidentally discovered a $2.8 billion drug operation during a routine medical appointment. 6 months later, Dr. Maya Washington stood before a congressional subcommittee investigating the intersection of healthcare fraud and drug trafficking. She wore a navy blue suit and the same diamond earrings that Sarah and David had tried to buy at Westfield Premium Outlets, earrings that Dr. Chen had given her as a thank you gift after recovering from her ordeal. Dr. Washington, the subcommittee chair said, can you summarize for the record what your investigation revealed about the vulnerability of medical institutions to criminal infiltration? Senator, we discovered that Vicente Morales' organization had systematically targeted hospitals because medical facilities have legitimate access to chemical precursors, sterile manufacturing environments, and transportation networks that criminals can exploit without detection. In the gallery behind her, Maya could see Marcus, who had been promoted to head the FBI's Medical Fraud Division, and Dr. Chen, who had become a leading advocate for medical ethics reform. What reforms would you recommend to prevent similar operations in the future? Maya thought about the hospital reception, where she'd first encountered discrimination, the basement laboratory where she'd almost died, and the ICU where she'd saved Dr. Chen's life. Senator, I recommend mandatory reporting systems for unusual pharmaceutical activities, federal oversight of medical facility chemical inventories, and protection for medical professionals who report suspicious activities. The hearing continued for another hour, covering technical details and policy recommendations that would shape healthcare security for years to come. After the hearing, Maya walked out of the Capitol building with Marcus and Dr. Chen, three people whose lives had been forever changed by what should have been a routine medical appointment. Coffee? Doctor, Chen asked, pointing to a vendor cart near the Capitol steps. Coffee, Maya agreed. As they sat on a bench overlooking the National Mall, Dr. Chen pulled out her phone and showed them a news article. Vicente Morales was sentenced to life in federal prison without possibility of parole, she read. The judge said his operation represented the systematic perversion of medical institutions for criminal profit. Maya nodded, satisfied that justice had been served, but also aware that their work was far from finished. Dr. Chen, she said, our task force could use a medical ethics consultant. Interested? Dr. Chen smiled. Dr. Washington, after everything we've been through, I think we make a pretty good team. Marcus raised his coffee cup in a toast. To medical professionals who refused to let healing become harming. They clinked their coffee cups together. Three people who had faced down a criminal organization and won, who had transformed discrimination into justice, and who were committed to protecting the institutions that society depended on for healing. Because that's what justice looks like sometimes. Not dramatic courtroom victories or headline-grabbing arrests, but quiet moments when good people choose to do the right thing, even when the cost is high. And that's a story worth telling. Thank you to everyone who typed healers and to all who shared your locations from around the world. Your global support for medical integrity means everything. If these stories of medical courage inspire you, please subscribe to join our community and help us share more incredible tales of professionals who risk everything for justice.